Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam, and in today's video we're going to be doing my monthly wrap-up for April. In April I ended up reading 12 books, which was great. I feel like I was finally able to get my reading groove back, and I just overall had a fun time reading this month. Before I get too far into this video, I did get a haircut recently. Very excited about it. The ends were fried. So a nice shorter cut for the summer. But let's just talk about the books that I read in April. The first book that I read this month is in a reading vlog of starting my TBR Takedown series, and that was Guild by Raven Kennedy, and I ended up rating this 3.5 stars. I thought this was a really interesting premise. In this book, we're following Oren, who is a gold-plated woman, and she is trapped in King Midas's castle, palace. So it's kind of a King Midas retelling where everything he touches turns to gold. I'm not entirely sure how much to say about this book because I went in really only knowing what I just mentioned, and I found that a lot of things kind of took me by surprise, and I really enjoyed that. I found the writing to be very quick to read. I find that that's really Raven Kennedy's writing. I found that in the Cupidity series, and I really liked the world and how we got it in pieces, so it was a lot easier to understand and follow the story. I do feel that the middle of the book slowed down a lot more, and I was kind of just waiting for something to happen, but definitely did not see the ending coming, and I'm really looking forward to continuing this series and finding out what is coming in book 2. I have heard a lot of people say that the first 3 books are the best and the series kind of falls off after, but I'm still very much looking forward to continuing this series and seeing what I think myself. The next book that I read in April was Spiral by Bal Cabra. This was another 3.5-star read. I was really looking forward to this book because although I enjoyed Collide, I heard even better things about Spiral, and so I had pretty high expectations. In this one, we're following Elias and Sage, and Elias has like a bad reputation because of the press. He's kind of new to this hockey team post college, and he just hasn't been able to get his mojo back because of the things that the press is saying. This is also a sports romance. We have a hockey player and a ballerina. Sage has a difficult background, and I also just found Sage to be kind of abrasive. It makes sense with her background, but there was some situations where the actions or the things that she's saying don't really make sense with how she was feeling in maybe the previous chapter or even the previous paragraph. I also feel like, and I think I mentioned this when I read Collide, I feel like it talks about very deep topics but doesn't really go into depth. So it talks about mental health and it talks about some very hard experiences that our characters have had to go through, but doesn't really dive into how they're feeling or how they're coping with it at all. I just wanted a bit more of that. And with that, I feel like a lot of the conflicts were resolved very quickly. And we also got like these very big conflicts that were resolved in a couple of pages. And so I didn't feel the connection between our main characters because we didn't get the small in between quiet moments between them. And I think that's really important for a effective romance book. So Spiral, along with the next book, were also in another reading vlog where I was continuing series. That will also be linked up in the cards. And the next book that I read was Vow of Deception by Rena Kent. I've been really in like a dark romance kind of vibe or like a more emotional romance kind of vibe, where I feel like is very reflective of the books that I read this month. And I ended up rating this one 4 stars. I was really torn for a lot of this. The way that this book started was wild, and this book felt a lot more like a psychological thriller, dark romance kind of vibes, with all the twists and the turns and the things that were coming up. And again, I don't want to say too much about this one because it relates to things that were happening in the Throne duet. So if you are reading Rena Kent's universe in order, I don't want to spoil anything. I have mentioned this before. I am reading it in the Mafia order, so there have been some things from I think the regular order that have been mentioned, but I don't know. but I did end up rating this 4 stars. I was shocked by how this book ended, did not see that coming at all, and just overall had a really great reading experience. And I feel like the way that everything built up to the ending really just made it even better, in my opinion. In this one, we are following Adrian, who is one of the mafia heads that we meet in the Throne duet, and he's like genuinely psychotic, like terrifying. And there was definitely some very questionable things that happen in this book, which make a lot more sense once we get to the end, but at the time was like really pushing my limit on the things that I am okay with reading. So definitely check the trigger warnings for this book. Very dark. The next book that I read was another buddy read with bestie Emily. We've been trying to get back on our buddy read schedule, but our last couple of buddy reads have been a bit of a slog. So hopefully we are on the up and up, but we did end up reading Devour the Dark by Nikki St. Crow. I ended up reading this 4.5 stars. I just love this world and these characters that Nikki has created. So this is the second book in the spin-off series to The Vicious Lost Boys, which is a dark Peter Pan retelling, and this one follows some of our side characters. And it's just so much fun. It was definitely not as spicy as I was expecting it to be, and honestly kind of wish that it was, but the exploration and expansion of the world that we got in this and kind of the hints of what is to come for the next books that are in this series or in the, well, this was a duology, so this is finished, but the next book that we're getting in sort of this world, I'm so excited for. I think what she's doing with this world is just fascinating. Again, this is very dark, so check your trigger warnings, but 4.5 stars. Had just the best time, and I think this was exactly what Emily and I needed. Next, my hold at the library for Rebel Witch came in, so this is the next book that I read, and I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. I thought this was really good, although I didn't quite enjoy it as much as Heartless Hunter or The Crimson Moth, depending on where in the world you are from. I found this book to be very fast-paced, again, with just fantastic banter. I loved our two main characters, and I felt that the twists and the turns of what was happening was very interesting, although it felt a bit redundant. And again, I feel like our characters' opinions changed very quickly from chapter to chapter, which got a bit annoying because based on the events of the first book, you know that our characters are like obsessed with each other. And so just the kind of wishy-washy back and forth was a little bit frustrating. I also found it to be pretty predictable. I did see like the overall arc of the events of this book coming, although the way that it entirely played out was a little bit different, and I wish that we got a bit more from the ending because I feel like the way that this was going to end was very obvious, and I found it very strange that nobody else really mentioned this until we were almost through the book. But overall, I thought this was a great duology, and it was just like so much fun. If you don't know what this duology about, this is about a witch and a witch hunter in a world where witches have been outlawed, I guess, and our witch disguises herself as a witch hunter but is helping witches escape. It's a lot of fun. Next book that I read, which will be in an upcoming reading vlog, is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. And I know that a lot of people really disliked this book, and I think for the ways that a lot of people disliked it, I really enjoyed it. Ali Hazelwood has really been a hit or miss author for me recently, and I feel like she's starting to move away from the same sort of plots that she's been doing and trying to do something different or something more that she really wants to do and she's really excited about. And I feel like you could tell with this book, and I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was going to be great, but I did not expect to kind of be hit in the feels the way that I was. I feel like the relationship between our main characters was very realistic, as well as the interactions between the people around them. It just felt very much like a college relationship and just things that are going on in your friendships and pressures from school and outside factors. And like your own personal pressures. The mental health rep and discussions in this were very well done, and I was on the verge of tears for the majority of this book. And overall, just felt like Ellie cracked my head open, took a peek inside, and wrote this book. A lot of the diving information and swimming information just went right over my head, but I did find it really interesting, and the student athlete dynamic was very fascinating to me. And yeah, I don't know. I just really love this one, and it just really hit me in the feels. So very excited for Allie Hazelwood's next releases. I'm hoping that they stay on the up and up. Next, another library hold came in, and that was Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. So this is the third and final book in the Emily Wilde series, and I ended up listening to this on audio, and I settled on a 3-star. I ended up bumping up the playback speed to 1.25 times. Typically, I can only listen to 1 time speed for audiobooks. I really hate the sound of sped up voices. And also, I only read when I'm driving or doing something else, and I'm very easily distracted. So I need to be able to have it at a speed that I can actually take in the information. And I think that helped me out a lot because just the way that this book is written feels very slow. I just overall don't really care about these characters, and I feel like there's not enough happening in the book. I did find this plotline to be a lot easier to follow and much more believable than some of the other plot lines in the previous books. But I still just find the magic system very difficult to follow and understand. And the way that this is written is kind of like a scientific journal. So there's footnotes, and those footnotes are read much faster than the rest of the book. And I just don't take in the information because it just doesn't make sense, or I just don't care. I don't know. Probably both. And I also feel like once we finally got to the end, it just was resolved way too quickly. I feel like we were building up to this grand ending and then nothing really came out of it. I don't know. I'm very glad to be finished with the series. The next book that I read in April was The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. This will also be in an upcoming reading vlog, but this was my first 5-star of the year. I feel like I can't not rate a Jessa Hastings book 5 stars now. Her writing is just so beautiful, and all of her characters are very real, very messy. And this in particular, Georgia, was so fascinating to me. She is studying some sort of behavioral science, I think. And so she's very good at reading people, and I found it just so fascinating. And I've noticed that I've been picking up on the little cues that were mentioned and explained in this book in other books, or even in like my personal life. And this book also talks about very deep and traumatic experiences. So definitely check trigger warnings before going into this. It's very heavy, but I don't know, Jess just does it so well. And the relationship or romance in this book is everything. It really had the feeling of like to be seen is to be loved. And I almost just want to reread it again. It kind of had this slow, dull ache the entire time I was reading it. And again, was like almost in tears the whole time. I love Jessa Hastings' writing. I'm so glad I finally decided to pick up one of her books. Next, I actually had an ebook from the library ready, so I was able to use my Kobo for the first time, and I would just love to say I am so happy with that purchase. It's just amazing being able to look on Overdrive and look through the books that are available at my library and immediately request them from my Kobo is just, it's great. I love it. 10 out of 10 purchase. So if you're Canadian and you want to get into your library or you want to use e-readers more, I would highly recommend. I think it's great. One book down and I'm so happy with my purchase. But the book that I ended up reading was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I read this very quickly. I read this in 2 days and I really enjoyed it overall, but kind of the middle, like third, I guess, started to get very frustrating. I was really irritated at our main characters. I feel like for me, Abby Jimenez's female main characters specifically are very difficult for me to get along with so far. I feel like they just can't get into a relationship. I don't know. I have just felt very similar qualities between Brianna and the female from Part of Your World. I will say the ending definitely brought it up for me, but I really wish that our main characters just had better communication. They were writing these very beautiful and adorable letters to each other, but then didn't like really talk about their relationship. There was just some things that happened that just didn't make sense to me. I also felt our main characters were a bit too self-deprecating, which I don't know, is kind of realistic, but at the same time is just so frustrating to me. And I do really appreciate the anxiety rep that Jacob had. But yeah, this ended up being a solid 4 stars. I do think the ending gave a lot of explanation and a lot of clarity as to why the characters acted the way that they did throughout the book. And so it gave me a bit more appreciation for the story. But yeah, I just wish that kind of middle chunk wasn't the way that it was. Next, Emily and I finished another buddy read, and that was Night of the Goddess by Briar Bolin. And I ended up rating this 3 stars, although that's probably generous. But this is very much a 3-star that I just didn't really care either way. This series is rough for me. I find it very slow and clunky, and the world is not very well put together. There was really nothing happening for the majority of this book, and once we got kind of to the climax at the end, it made no sense at all. I feel like the stories that were told throughout the series didn't relate to what was happening at the end. It was just very confusing and out of place. And I feel like just the formulation of this book was very poorly done. So the series is definitely not for me, and I'm intrigued to see if other people are going to start picking up the series because of her new series coming out, or that just came out. And I'm really torn on whether or not I'm going to pick that series up because I really struggled through this one, but we'll see. Next, I ended off the month with a fantastic 2 books. So the first book is Unsteady by Peyton Corinne, and I ended up rating this 5 stars. I had just the best time with this book. I loved the mental health rep in this book, everything that our characters went through. It just felt very real, and so much happened in this book. It was so painful, but with everything that happened in this book and all of the explanation and all of the things that our characters went through, I really believed in their connection. Like, this is really showcasing some little moments between our characters and just some of the friendships and like introductions to other characters in the series, or who I assume is going to be coming in this series, was just so great. There was so much depth and just a very realistic discussion on mental health and sort of moving through life after something traumatic happens. Again, another hockey romance. We have a hockey player and a figure skater. Just so much fun, but also like so painful, but also like giddy and swoony, and I just love them so much and wanted to immediately go by unloved. But I have so many books that I really need to get to, but that's so high on my TBR. And the last book that I read this month was Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage, and I ended up listening to this on audio. And this was another 5 stars. I, again, just felt like their connection and relationship was so realistic. The past chapters that we got about the meeting and everything that happened, the way that things fell apart, just so realistic. It was so realistic. I just loved our 2 main characters, the way that their lives intertwined even after being apart for so long. It was just so great. And I really think that I really think that Lila Sage has just gotten better and better, and I'm very looking forward to her new book coming out near the end of this year. There's also a bonus chapter in this book after the acknowledgement, so keep listening, keep reading through it, and that had me sobbing. I had such a fun reading month this month. Finally got some 5-star reads. I haven't had a 5-star read all year since, I think I checked and it was like September or something. So it's been a while since I've been completely obsessed with a book and just felt it deep in my soul. But we finally got 3, so that was just a fantastic reading month, and I'm just so excited to keep reading and reading and see what kind of books I get to in May. I continued or finished a lot of series in this month, so a little pat on my back for that one. I have still a lot of series that I really want to read and get through before starting too many more. That is all I have for today. Let me know what your favorite book that you read in April was. I would love to chat with you. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like so that I know. I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.